So let's look at the data generating process. In experiments, mentioned that we need them for causation. You often have a setting that is in a laboratory, confined space, a lot of control about all possible variables that might also influence my headache, my comfort with a certain game, my reaction to authority, as in the Milgram experiment setup that you see here on the left. Usually what you try to do in an experiment in the data generating process is that you have a systematic variation and nothing else but that systematic piece varying, right? They are often smaller in scale, and they are specifically designed to answer that particular research question. What's the effect of X on Y? X being the treatment, Y being my outcome. Now, sometimes there is a little bit of an issue in having strong internal validity, so you can be really sure you nailed down that effect of X on Y. But you might be much less sure on whether this holds outside that confined laboratory space. So something to keep in mind. But here, if you think of the data generating process, obviously, you would want to make sure that you do know what is the laboratory setup, how was the treatment administered, what possible confounders were there, the randomization of people from, a large pool of people that you select into treatment group and control group. Was that really enough to even out all other characteristics that these people have so that these two groups are most comparable? All those things are questions about the data generating process that you should ask. Looking at survey interview data, they have also very interesting characteristics. They are usually designed and have a specific research question or purpose in mind, right? Examples would be political polling or health surveys, consumer satisfaction surveys. They all are designed, questions carefully crafted, so that you do get answers to that research question. Or at least we hope so, and that's what we teach in questionnaire design. Surveys vary largely in their quality and in their size, of course, too. It depends on the one hand, your sample size, but also on what we call response rate, how many people do participate in the survey, or other elements in the survey process. We'll talk a lot more about what can go wrong here, but right now keep in mind, specifically designed and vary a lot in size and quality. Usually we deal with sample surveys. Sometimes you see survey data called, or even the census be called survey data. But the processes, or the elements in the process and possible error sources, are largely the same between the two. And then there's a third type of data that are not designed. So unlike experiments and survey data, these data are often called found data or organic data. They appear as part of a process or as part of a largely uncontrolled data collection effort. One example we want to give you here are data collected through the Boston Street Bump app. As you can see, these data just appear. And they have all the features of what we call big data these days. For one, they will provide large volume. The sheer size of people downloading this app, using it, creating data minute by minute by minute by minute is of course enormous. Second feature is their velocity. They come in at a high frequency, and that creates an additional analytical challenge. They also come in a wide variety. So here we have timestamps, we have geo-coordinates, we have motion measures, and if you think of the big data space in general, you can think of even more variety. Pictures, sounds, anything can be turned into data. That's probably why you take this course, because data are everywhere and are pretty exciting. But for us, the interesting part is actually the last one. The data are also erroneous, or they can be. You might be doubtful about certain elements here in your data set. You might be missing entire pieces. I spoke earlier about the issue of known or at least positive selection probabilities. So those are things to keep in mind when you do evaluate the data generating process. Now, another form of process data, not quite with the same frequency, although depending on the process, could be pretty high as well, administrative data. Here, these processes are processes that are sort of a side effect of program administrations of any kind. Let's say a social security administration, welfare benefit programs, any of these. There's forms to fill out, there's some record that exists because a payment was made or was kept track of. Anything of that nature will create data, increasingly electronically and even more increasingly available to researchers, both in the commercial, private sector and nonprofit world. Of course, within the administrations, these data are always been available, but again, not necessarily in a form that's electronic and easily available. Interesting though, again, data quality. Often you have very high quality on variables that are program relevant. For example, if the records are used to determine your pension, then the income data are probably pretty good. Other variables, maybe not so much. In this German form snippet that you see here, there are information on education that the employers put in. They might not know. It's not important for these forms and what they're used for. So the quality of these data might be much lower. Also, often the number of variables on these administrative data is rather small. So an interesting challenge comes when we link the different data sets together. And for that reason, further down the line in our specialization, we will talk about data linkage, how to do that, what to think about it when you do it.